it's wonderful to see her like just on this meteoric rise, because it just means that people are really paying attention to what the court has to say. I think it's great. She's one of the most amazing people and doesn't get enough credit for a lot of the work that she's done in the past and what she's doing now.
Have you ever been on a website for a very specific reason? Then you click on a hyperlink, and then another. Ooh, look, suggested videos. Next thing you know, you spent hours researching a super obscure topic. Your mind has transcended planes. You're now an expert. So come on the show and tell us about it. Hello and welcome to Hyperlink. I'm your host, Dominic, and with us is our guest, Jireh Deng. Hello.
Hi.
And today you're going to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yes, I am.
Can you tell me a little bit about her?
So Ruth Bader Ginsburg is a Supreme Court justice right now, and she is the baddest lady on the court.
Can you tell me a little bit about her early life?
So Ruth actually went to Cornell University for her undergrad. When she graduated high school, her dad actually died of cancer, and then she went into undergrad at Cornell. And when she was there, she met her husband, Marty Ginsburg, and they're really cute. Like when he passed away recently, what he said was that they really appreciated each other because they had a relationship that was like a partnership. And I think that speaks to a lot of Ruth as a person. She was really, from the minute that she began her career in law, she's always been someone who's very independent. So she goes to law school. She's studying law actually at Harvard University. And this is at a time where women were not going to law school at all. And while she's there, her husband also gets prostate cancer. Along with that, she has a daughter. And so she's trying to raise a daughter, take care of her husband who has cancer, all the while she's studying law. She's barely getting any sleep. When her husband gets cancer, she decides that she has to move actually to Columbia University to finish her third year of law school. And she graduates top of her class, beats all the men with a baby and a sick husband.
That's
she
wild.
Can do it all.
Yeah, she's a pretty big advocate for women's rights, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So after she graduated from law school, she couldn't find any jobs because back then they were not very understanding of women who had children, and so she couldn't find a job anywhere. So she basically went into teaching. She was teaching at Columbia for a while, and while she was teaching at Columbia, she got involved with the ACLU. In 1971, she co-started that division of the women's rights section of the ACLU, and it was there that she was one of the main litigators who really jump-started this process of fighting for women's rights. So back when in the 1970s, there were only two standards for evaluating, basically, I believe it is the Equal Protection Clause. So there was the lowest standard, which was just reasonable, and then intermediate was established through Craig v. Boren, which is just for sex, and then you have strict scrutiny. So intermediate scrutiny was created during Ruth Bader Ginsburg's time.
These are different ways of evaluating whether or not people are getting equal protections under the Bill of Rights?
Yes, under the Bill of Rights. So this is the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So she basically was one of the main litigators, and a lot of her cases were really interesting. So back then, the court, which was the Burger Court, was completely men, all men. And so she had to figure out a strategy to get these men to agree with her that women's rights were an issue. So how do you do that? So she had a lot of cases that are initially like a lot having to do with women's rights, but a lot of those were not heard by the court. Some of the interesting cases that she brought up to the court were Frontier versus Richardson and Weinberger versus Weisenfeld. So the first case, Frontier versus Richardson, involved a case where a woman who was in the military didn't receive the same benefits as her male counterparts. So she brought that case up, and one of the quotes was, from that case, which is one of my favorites, she asks the court and says to them, "I don't ask a lot for my sex. All I ask is for our brethren to take their feet off our necks."
Dang.
Right? She's spitting fire. And
Yeah.
she's not even a judge yet. She's just a litigator. And she's doing all of this pro bono for the ACLU. And then she also brings up the case, Weinberger, no, sorry.
No
Let me double check.
worries.
Okay, this was Weinberger versus Weisenfeld. And this case involved a widower who, his wife was actually the main breadwinner, and his wife had died in childbirth. So he was left with a kid, and he was figuring out, oh my goodness, I can't support myself and this child because there's just so much going on. And the laws at that time did not really think about men who might actually be caretakers, and she was the one that brought this case up and said, you know, women's rights not only affects women, it affects men, because these harmful stereotypes about the roles that women and men have in society affect everyone. So that case really solidified a trend towards really deciding these cases to intermediate scrutiny. So it wasn't strict scrutiny yet, still isn't strict scrutiny yet, but she's working her way up there, you know?
Yeah, in order to fight for women's rights, she first tried to fight for rights for men, and then through that process, eventually slowly started fighting for rights for women.
Yeah, I think that was because she really wanted to bring women's rights to the table, but at the time it just wasn't working out, so she had to push through with the cases that did work, which were mainly cases involving men's rights.
Can you tell me about what she's doing now?
Yeah, so Ruth Bader Ginsburg became famous after the Hobby Lobby case, which was a few years back, I believe in 2015, and this case involved basically Hobby Lobby as a private entity was not providing healthcare that would cover contraceptives to their employees because of religious reasons. And so she writes a scathing dissent. So in that case, she basically tells off all of her male colleagues and says, you basically don't understand like reproductive rights. This is a really big issue for women. And she basically blows up on the internet. But I think what is really interesting is that before she even became famous and became known as this figure called the Notorious RBG, she has always been her own individual person. Yeah, and I think what has happened with just a lot of like the news and stuff, they forget that she has this rich history of standing up for women's rights way before any of this, and so she's way more than this one-dimensional, like cute, kind of cutesy grandma that sits on the court that everybody loves. She's really quiet, but she's really strong, and she's really like thoughtful about everything that she does.
So you mentioned that she's a little bit of a meme in some ways.
Yes.
Can you go over some of those memes?
Well, yeah. So there's the ones like you can't spell the truth without Ruth. The name Notorious RBG actually came from the fact that the Notorious B.I.G. and the Notorious RBG are both from the Bronx, Brooklyn, New York. So right there that's the similarity. Yeah. But people love her, and she's all over the internet. She's a meme. They're gonna make a Funko Pop of her, so
Ooh.
Christmas ideas, friends.
Yes.
If anyone wants to buy me a Funko Pop of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you will be my homie for life.
And you've got the patch too.
I know, this patch. So I got this at my favorite bookstore in downtown LA, the Last Bookstore, and I was very happy because I found this patch of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And there's like videos of her, like where she's working out with Stephen Colbert on like YouTube, and she's wearing this shirt that says Super Diva. Amazing, and everyone loves it. There's actually even movies about her. The newest one with Felicity Jones is On the Basis of Sex, and there's also the other one that was the one just the feature film on her by Magnolia Pictures, and that's the one I watched because that one's really great. But yeah, and she also has appeared on SNL as a character. You had Kate McKinnon wearing glasses and her hair in a bun and a javit and black robes, and she's like, "You just got Ginsburg." so yeah, things like that. And it's great. Honestly, it's wonderful to see her like just on this meteoric rise, because it just means that people are really paying attention to what the court has to say. And I think it's great. She's one of the most amazing people and doesn't get enough credit for a lot of the work that she's done in the past and what she's doing now.
Can you tell me where people can find a little bit more about Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
So you can actually look up on her, she has like a Tumblr account dedicated to her, like dedicated. That's actually how this whole thing like started, the obsession with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The creators of, one of the creators of the blog ended up partnering with someone who was a journalist, and they made a whole book about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So that's another place that you can look up. Honestly, you can just look her up on the internet and you will find like pictures of her doing everything, falling asleep at the State of the Union because she was not 100% sober because she was having drinks and eating right before that. And you can also find pictures of her sitting on an elephant with oh shoot, what's his name? Scalia, sorry. So they were best buds.
Scalia was another Supreme Court justice,
yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah. So they were on opposite ends of the ideological spectrum on the Supreme Court, but outside of the court when they weren't talking about stuff, they were best friends. Like they would just hang out all the time. They even went on vacation together, and there's a picture of them both riding an elephant.
It's great.
It's great. Their relationship is beautiful.
That's true friendship is riding an elephant together.
Right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming on the show, Jireh. If you want to learn more about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you can check out any of the stuff you mentioned about her, or check out our podcast, Hyperlink by 22West. You can find it on any of the podcast networks. And yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you for inviting me here.
Yeah.
This was great. Yay.
Cool.